Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here, welcoming you all to another exciting edition of Fighting Game Thursday. Out of all of the franchises that people have persistently been asking me to cover on this channel recently, one series stands out as being requested more than any other, and that series is of course Bloody Roar. The Bloody Roar titles proved to be popular polygonal fighting games throughout the late 90s and into the early 2000s, and would often be mentioned in conversations when talking about the likes of Tekken and Soul Calibur. While we have seen new Tekken and Soul Calibur games in recent years, the same cannot be said for poor old Bloody Roar. In fact, despite the series' evident popularity and widespread following, the last Bloody Roar game to see release was now an entire 19 years ago, thus meaning that loyal fans of Bloody Roar have been waiting for a new game even longer than delusional Nintendo fans who have been waiting for the company to localise Mother 3. So a bloody long time. This may be the harsh reality that we all live in, but at least for all of you at home there is some compensation, as it is finally time for Big Daddy Top Hat to give this series some much needed loving. That's right, in today's episode we are going to go back in time and look at the very first game in the series and discuss just what it is about this video game that would captivate the audience's attention, earning it a place in players' hearts so many years later. There is no doubt that Bloody Roar is beloved, so I will also try my best to address why fans of this franchise have been given a Bloody Roar deal and are seemingly waiting for a new game forever. So without further ado, this, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Bloody Roar, a fan favourite fighting game. Yeah! The year is 1997 and polygonal based fighting games are hugely popular in both the arcades and on the Sony PlayStation. The Tekken trilogy had been wowing players around the world with its intuitive gameplay, and Namco's weapons-based fighting game Soul Edge had also proved to be a massive hit with consumers too. That's all without even mentioning how massive the Virtua Fighter franchise had become in Japan, with the video games helping the Sega Saturn permanently outsell the Nintendo 64 in the region. There is no doubt that games of this style played a pivotal part in the console wars that generation, and would often influence consumers with regards to which platform they would choose to purchase. The market for games like this was huge, so it is no surprise that new fighting game franchises would continue to emerge. One of these would of course be Bloody Roar, appearing in both the arcades and on the Sony PlayStation. The original arcade version of Bloody Roar was released as Bloody Roar Hyper Beast Duel in Europe and Japan, and under the title of Beasterizer in North America. The game would be developed by a company known as Reiji, who had cut their teeth in the past in the arcade market, primarily releasing arcade shoot-em-ups. But with the popularity of 3D fighting games on the rise, the shift to developing a fighting game would serve as a lucrative opportunity to diversify. The sales and distribution of these arcade cabinets was handled by Eighting, with both Eighting and Reiji being made up of former staff members from Compile, another company that had focused much of their development efforts on the shoot-em-up genre. So the shift to fighting games really was something different. The PlayStation conversion of the game would be handled by Hudson Soft, with both versions of the game being critically well received, which we will touch more on shortly. But before we get to that, I guess it is important to discuss what Bloody Roar brought to the table that would help it stand out in such a competitive field of gaming. For obvious reasons, there was a lot of polygonal based fighting games around at this time, but Bloody Roar would feature an interesting gimmick in its play mechanics that would help make it unforgettable. What I am talking about is of course the fighters in the game's abilities to transform, allowing for fighters to change into various beasts mid-play. Such a mechanic had already assisted Altered Beast becoming the stuff of legends in the past, with said video game now being considered amongst the most iconic on the entire Mega Drive platform, despite the gameplay itself being somewhat mediocre. The cool visuals that the transformations brought to Altered Beast would lead to a period whereby the game would function as a Sega Mega Drive packing game, with the title's interesting visuals helping to pique consumers' interests. Thinking about it, an arcade company taking a gimmick from Altered Beast and smashing it with gameplay and graphics like what could be found in Tekken was certainly somewhat of a genius move that would result in Bloody Roar making decent money, with the game still being talked about now. The original arcade version of the title was directed by Susumu Hibi, a director at Reiji who would go on to be involved with most instalments in the Bloody Roar series. He had previously worked as a director for games in Hudson Soft's Bomberman series, so when it came to the PlayStation conversion of the game that was handled by Hudson, Hibi would work closely with Hudson's Kenji Fukuya, with the pairing ensuring the conversion was as smooth as possible. Whichever version of the game you happen to play, one thing is for sure, you are going to be experiencing a beastly game. Bloody Roar includes a basic story which focuses around a group of warriors known as zoanthropes, who, as already covered, possess the power to be able to transform into half-human, half-animal beasts, with each fighter in the game being able to morph into a different creature. Like many fighting games, this tale features the cliché of an evil organisation known as the Tylon Corporation, whom many of the characters in the game hold a grudge against. The Tylon Corporation plans to use zoanthropes as mind-controlled weapons for global military invasions. Amongst the fighters in the game, Yugo, who is a wolf zoanthrope, is trying to avenge his father, who was previously killed in a war trying to stop Tylon. Throughout his journey he encounters Gado, a former comrade in arms of his father, with the pair promising to destroy Tylon together, liberating zoanthropes from their horrible experiments. Speaking of the game's characters, Gado is a French lion zoanthrope, a professional mercenary and military genius who wants to crush Tylon. We then have Bakuryu, a mole zoanthrope and an expert in assassination and a self-styled master of ninja arts. There is Mitsoku Nonomura, a wild sow zoanthrope and an everyday housewife who wants revenge after her daughter's kidnapping. Jinlong, a Chinese tiger zoanthrope and troubled individual whose mother and younger sister died one after another during his childhood. Alice Tsukugami, a rabbit zoanthrope who was kidnapped by Tylon and experimented on as a child. Gregory Jones, an American gorilla zoanthrope and a retired ringmaster. And Hans Tubman, an English fox zoanthrope with a warped mind who is obsessed with his own beauty, despising ugliness. Basically, Vega from Street Fighter 2. Together, these fighters make up a colourful roster of playable fighters, who each differ in their playstyle, bringing along all-round depth to the game. If players are able to make it to the end of this game, they will eventually encounter Yuriko, a secret weapon of Tylon. Yuriko is a young girl who was brainwashed by the corporation, and with the power to transform herself into a powerful zoanthrope, the Chimera, functioning as the final challenge for players. As for the gameplay that can be found within Bloody Roar, the game features a 5-button control scheme. 3 of these buttons are mapped to a punch, kick and a beast function, and combining these taps in sequences can trigger different moves, including a throw. As for the beast button itself, it relates directly to the beast bar, which is located under each fighter's life bar. You can obviously infer that this relates directly to performing a transformation, as when the bar is filled up, players can press the beast button to morph into the more powerful form and gain extra power and agility. These transformations start with a shockwave that can push away the opponent, and once the character is fully transformed, the beast button could be used as part of the attack arsenal. As each attack is performed in this form, the beast gauge will deplete, giving players a strategic opportunity to do as much damage as possible before the meter is completely depleted. Other advantages to beast mode include automatically recovering a portion of health, and the rave button becomes available to players. The rave button eliminates recovery time between combos and gives characters 10 times the speed, though this is at a cost of the beast bar. Like most fighting games, bouts in Bloody Roar are best of 3 encounters, with rounds ending with a knockout once an opponent's life bar has been drained. On top of the offensive strategies that can be implemented in this game, defensive techniques can also be taken advantage of, which is where the 5th button comes into play, which is used for cancelling. Characters can pull off guard attacks, slower defensive moves or guard escapes that involve sidestepping after guarding an attack. You can also avoid your opponent's mid and high attacks by ducking, but this makes you more vulnerable from low attacks. The game also includes an air recovery system where after being launched into the air, in certain conditions an air recovery can be performed. The home version of the game would include a number of extras outside of just an arcade and versus mode, meaning the game includes a time attack, survival and practice mode. To keep players coming back to the game, the title also includes a number of quirky unlockables. These include the ability to customise characters' appearances, such as making them giant, giving them meaty arms, or big heads. It's a lot like many of the silly unlockables in GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64. There is also an after image mode where characters will fight with a shadow behind them, opportunities to change camera angles, increase arena sizes, remove lighting, or even dress Alice as a sailor. The game has plenty of surprises here and there to find. IGN would praise the Sony PlayStation version of the game, with their website writing, "This game is a tight, playable fighter that ranks in the very upper tiers of brawlers on any system. And after playing this to death, my favourite Nintendo 64 fighter, Fighter's Destiny, pales in comparison." The animal transformations proved to be more than just a good marketing ploy too. Besides being visually enticing, the beasts pack an entire arsenal of blinding kick-ass moves special to their animal side. Add to that the rave button, which doubles your strength, and you've got yourself a game to play for months to come. Graphically, the game is sweet, with great shadows, detailed textures in both the backgrounds and on the characters, and likeable but yet bizarre character design. GameSpot would love the game too, declaring it one of the most original and exciting fighting games of 1997. They would state, Bloody Roar may look like a pretty plain fighting game at first glance, but with one tap of the beast button, all that changes. The game runs fast and very smoothly. The game's moves are also very dynamic, resulting in a lot of oohs and ahs as a wolf bites a chunk out of his opponent's neck and blood spurts everywhere, splattering on the ground. Sushi X of Electronic Gaming Monthly said the game's visuals definitely look good, but to see these characters engage in flashy combat is even more impressive. Next Generation reviewed the PlayStation version of the game, rating it 4 stars out of 5. And stated that overall Bloody Roar has solid gameplay and excellent graphics, even if it doesn't have any sense of style. And will take raw gameplay over style on any day. The positively received 1997 game would function as a solid foundation in which the entire Bloody Roar franchise would be built around, with many sequels following the success of the game. The franchise would later even be adapted into a manga, which was published in monthly Shonen Jump. Further to this, the star of the franchise Yugo would go on to appear as a playable character in the 2003 crossover fighting game DreamX TV World Fighters. So, with a fair amount of relevance, where in the blue hell has Bloody Roar been for the last 19 years? Well, if you have been paying attention, you would have noted that the PlayStation version of the game was developed by Hudson Soft. Back in February 2011, it was revealed that Hudson had a new Bloody Roar game in development for the first time in 8 years. But it was shortly after this that Hudson Soft would cease to exist as a company after being merged with Konami Digital Entertainment. If you know anything about modern Konami, then you will likely know that they do not have a great recent track record in the world of gaming. In fact, in 2015, the president of Konami's gaming division, Konami Digital Entertainment, Hideki Hayakawa, announced that Konami would shift their focus towards mobile gaming for a while, claiming that mobile is where the future of gaming lies. Prior to this terrible day in history though, back in August 2011, Morgan Harrow, a former Hudson Entertainment manager, would publish a blog post explaining the Bloody Roar situation after the Hudson shutdown. He would write, "A special note goes to the fans demanding a return of the Bloody Roar series. It was something I personally pushed for in the company, despite the crowded fighting game market. With digital distribution channels like Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, I felt there was a chance, if done right, to reinvigorate the series. There were some game design documents sent around internally of some spin-offs of the series, but it didn't seem like it was the right direction. There was a chance for something to happen late 2011, early 2012, but clearly we won't see what was to be. to the bloody Raw fans out there, I read every single one of your messages, petitions and calls for the series to be brought back. You guys are awesome, and perhaps someday a developer and the publisher will pick it up and do it justice. Until then, just know you guys rock. Still, not all hope is lost for a new bloody Raw game, because as of March 2020, Konami made a trademark application for bloody Raw titles. Obviously, the main issue is, though, this is Konami we are talking about, so it's likely that they are going to just use the license to make a bloody Raw mobile game, or in a worst case scenario, use the license to create a bloody Raw pachinko machine. What a bloody load of crap, eh? Bloody Raw is at present in terrible hands, which is one of the reasons that we have not seen a new game in the series for so long. Which means that, unfortunately, today's video ends on a bit of a sad note. However, if you enjoyed it, let me know if you'd like me to give the same coverage to bloody Raw 2 down the line. That just about brings this episode to a close, so ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of bloody Raw, and why we have not seen a new entry in the series for so long. Still, I hope you enjoyed this retrospective looking at the original game from the franchise and how this title became so popular so quickly. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out my video on Soul Calibur, which I uploaded last week, or if you've already seen it, why not check out some of my work from my deep historical backlog. There's stuff on Shaq Fu and all sorts. There is plenty of fighting game content for you to unearth on here. Videos like this are in part possible due to the generous support that I receive via Patreon that makes working on this platform on a full-time basis all the more possible. Speaking of my wonderful backers, special thank yous go out to A Murder of Crows, Carl Johnson, Sebastian Velez, Heo Paulo Lopez, Nostalgia Collector, Ben Harradine, Corey Imarsh Sr., Ron Dinched, Evan Border, Philip Namph, Azarakai, Dropkin Varela, Michael Cullix, Ego, Jordan Durant, Ian Boyle, Nick Daniels, Princess Zana, Daniel Daly, Computer Man, House of a Ted, Gary Pinkett, ECU Professor, Johnny Holly, August Piazza, Justin Wang, Capcom vs SNK, Hermes Gonzalez, Man Shovel, Michael Hall, Sang Hee, Norma Stitz, Langston Miller, Noob, Sarah Powell, Flaming Renee, Marvin Araliga, TOG Driver, Louis Viant, John Bates, David Bale, Chris Fisk, Rick67, Antonio Rodriguez, Craig Jenkins, Synth Spaces, Punk Toast, and everybody else who backs what I do over on the Patreon platform. Thank you very much. Me love you long time.